2. Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your normal partners in crime, Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn. Aaron, it's Wildcard week. How are we doing?
Say it again, slower.
It is Wildcard week and it's real.
I couldn't be better, man, to be honest. It's the playoffs. Bills are in the playoffs again, second time, 3 years. I still don't really know how to act. I'm probably acting like an idiot on Twitter, talking way too cocky, but I'm going to try to mellow it down here for the show and put my somewhat objective hat on and have a good, reasonable conversation about this game.
Absolutely. We got a lot of guys in the chat here tonight. All of our Cover One Premium subscribers able to come on, join us with our special guest, chat with us. Join the Cover One Premium Slack channel, which is by far the best value we have. Get to see all kinds of inside the behind the scenes kind of stuff. Checking out what we have going on. Check them out at cover1.net. And those special premium subscribers that are in the Slack tonight get to listen to us talk to our special guest, Brett Kollmann. Many of you are familiar with him, of his illustrious history in the film room on the YouTube channel. Brett, how we doing?
I'm doing wonderful, and I suppose I'm going to throw out a question for the chat while I can. When Sean McDermott gets his statue in front of the stadium, do you want him jumping through a table?
Clapping. I want him clapping vigorously.
Oh, yeah. And a little spit. I want one of the angry Sean McDermotts, like yelling at the officials. That Popeye face.
Full Popeye mode.
Oh, my God. I love it.
Yeah. So for anybody listening, you can check out at Brett Kollmann, BrettKollmann on the Twitter machine. Has an awesome YouTube channel. Many of you have seen quite an outstanding video for Josh Allen, and he's been one of those folks kind of fighting the good fight that he's not what everybody makes him out to be. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit about this upcoming matchup with the Houston Texans hosting the Buffalo Bills Saturday at 4:30. Right now it's floating around a 2.5 to a 3-point favorite for the Texans, which sounds about right to me. Pretty evenly matched teams, with the home team getting the normal swing. I've seen the over-under floating between 41 and 43, so a little bit higher actually than what some of the Bills games have been. And it looks like it's going to be an entertaining matchup. So to kind of start things out, Brett, just, what are some of your thoughts so far on the Texans side, what this season has been like, and from afar, and from, guys who are keeping up, as other invested fan bases do, in bits and pieces. It seems like it's been a story of different seasons depending on who's on the field.
Yeah, this Texans team, they really only play well when their back has been against the wall. I've never seen a team fall so flat in so many quote-unquote trap games. You look at Carolina, you look at Denver, that whole win-win loss pattern, it's real. And it's not just because of certain injuries at certain times. Certainly those have not helped, but just the team comes out flat. And they against teams that they should have beaten, and they really only played well against teams that they shouldn't have beaten. Hence, going on the road and beating KC against a healthy Pat Mahomes, and beating the Patriots for the first time in years. And this team is very much it's the most emotionally driven Texans team that I've seen in a long time, because they really play up or down to their competition. And that's why I think this Bills game intrigues me so much, is because A, the Bills are a good team, but B, we don't really know what to expect out of the Bills, because they're such a tough defensive, run-oriented team. And you would think on paper that the Bills' strengths match up not so great against the Texans' strengths, but at the same time, because they don't match up against the Texans' strengths, I fully expect them to win, because that's just how the Texans are this year. They just don't play. They never play how you expect them to, and all this on the paper stuff about scheme and everything like that, I almost throw it out the window for this team when they're going against somebody that they theoretically should beat, because they never play exactly how you expect them to play. Like, this line of 2.5 to 3-point favorites is like such a trap to me. Like, if I was picking the game, I would fully expect the Bills to win because they don't match up well. It doesn't smell right to me.
I think the thing that's tough for a lot of people, and it was really tough for me this week, I started preparing for the Texans before I felt like that was a good use of my time, investing my time to start. So I've been watching and looking at Texans and looking at different stats and trying to find any type of real edge, at least from a Bills perspective. And this is a weird game for me because I think both teams haven't really had any identity as far as who is this team going to be come playoffs this year. They both lack consistency. You guys lack consistency more with lack of being able to string together some wins. Bills lack it on being able to move the ball and score points. Can their offense win games? So neither team has really pulled away with who is this team going to be. And I think more so maybe than anybody in the playoffs. And that's why I've had a difficult time getting this game and trying to get a good feel for what this game was going to be like. I want to ask you, though, there's one thing I think that the Texans have a pretty decent advantage of, and that is experience, playoff experience. The Bills are only going back for the second time in the last 3 years. A lot of the guys on this team weren't involved in that. They've had a lot of turnover on the offensive side. How much more do you think experience plays on the Texans side of this? And specifically at the quarterback position, one game of playoffs, is that much more experience than what Josh Allen has coming into his first game? How much more of an advantage does Deshaun Watson have playing a single playoff game versus not playing a game at all?
I would say if you take into consideration their college careers, Deshaun played in a lot of big games in college. Some would argue even bigger games than a wildcard NFL game, national championships against Bama twice. And so I think he's experienced in big moments. But I don't necessarily think the team overall has that big of an experience advantage because a lot of the guys that they're throwing out there are either young or they're kind of new to the team. Gary and Conley didn't start the year with them. Hargraves didn't start the year with them. Eric Reed, he's still young. They're getting J.J. Watt back. He's played in a lot of games, but at the same time, he hasn't played since week 8. So is there going to be rust there? Bernardrick McKinney, he's been dealing with multiple concussions over the last month of the season. So how much prep time has he been able to have against, in my opinion, a pretty tricky Bills offense to read at some points? I think overall, there's a lot of experience with the Texans here, but I don't think it's that much more than Buffalo when you consider how well coached they are, how disciplined they are as a team. I can't, even though I'm a Texans fan, I expect the Bills to win because it just doesn't smell right to me.
No, and I think we talked about that a little as we were prepping, and you're talking about what you had brought up in the fact that the matchups don't necessarily line up stereotypically well for Buffalo, and one of that is this Texans secondary is really having a rough time of it. In order to activate J.J. Watt, that we'll get to in a bit here, you saw Deshaun Gibson put on the IR. You have pretty much the entire rest of the secondary in a limited fashion in the practice lineup and what they're rehabbing from. And you look at a Bills squad that runs the ball well. We've had some bits and pieces of passing success, but that's not necessarily the go-to element for the Bills offense. How do you think that's going to play out? Do you think this is a get-right game for that secondary that's been banged up? Or do you think that it's banged up enough that this Bills team that struggled with consistency in the passing offense may see their ability to step forward and take advantage of that?
I guess it kind of depends on the concepts they're trying to defend, because even when you go back and look at the Tampa game a few weeks ago, I mean, they just didn't stop throwing down the field. They, a couple interceptions early, but when they got single high, whether it was cover 3 or man free, whatever it was, if they got one-on-one, they were taking shots, and eventually they were going to hit on them, and eventually they did, especially to Perriman. And so I know that these corners struggle particularly lately, they struggled against the deep ball when they're isolated one-on-one because they struggle to find the football in the air. And so I think if Buffalo, if they just continue to hammer away and take shots to John Brown and they take maybe some shots to Knox, if they can get him isolated, eventually they're going to get some explosive plays. And that's really where I'm most worried, because if you can get explosive plays on this Texans defense and get in the red zone, Buffalo's been a pretty good red zone offense this year too. Speaking about the run game, the Texans on paper have been a very good run defense, but in more so inside the tackles, in my opinion, than outside the tackles. If they get the zone read going and they get Josh Allen on a keeper out the backside, if they're running counter, if they're running toss, getting Singletary out on the edge, there's not a whole lot of speed at linebacker there, and they could get some angles that way. Again, that's why I'm so uncomfortable with this, because while on paper you could look at some stats and say they match up well. Some of the things that Buffalo does well, they have the potential to really, really kill this Houston defense. And if they can even just keep the game close with how much they get creative with pressures and coverages, like especially with Hyde and Poyer and everything like that, and how they disguise everything on the back end. Yeah, Deshaun's pretty good against zone, but if you're distracting him with all these post-snap coverage rolls and making him hold the ball, he takes a lot of sacks when you do that. He's taken 34 sacks against zone this year. And particularly with Buffalo, their style of zone defense, it's not just, we're showing you a too high shell and that's it. Like, they're going to show one thing and then move to the other and make him hold the ball and make him take sacks. So for me, the scenario that I'm seeing in my head is, a couple deep shots to John Brown that connect, one to Knox that connects. You get some big runs outside with Singletary. You get some keepers with Allen. You put 14 points on the board. You get a lead, and then all of a sudden you're throwing all these crazy coverages at Deshaun and making him hold the ball for just a split second. You take a bad sack. You have to punt it away. You lose field position. You lose the clock, and next thing you know, the game gets away from you. So that's why I'm so uncomfortable with this, is because even though it's a good matchup for them, it's really not a good matchup for them.
Well, I like the scenario you're describing. So just so you know, that's getting me excited and twisting me towards changing my game prediction. But, to that point, I do believe something Greg and I talk a lot about on this show is toxic differential. And this game screams big time in favor of whoever can win that toxic differential. And I do look at it as the Texans' offensive strength, but it's also the Bills' defensive strength. So like you said, I think that some of that can go, negate itself. What I want to ask you about, though, is I do think it's going to be the Bills are going to need to come up with some of those deep passing plays. That has not been something that the Buffalo Bills can rely on. And usually when we have guests on, I primarily ask their opinion about that team. But I want to get your opinion here on Josh Allen on this, because I know you studied him and I respect your opinion on this. One, is it as big of a deal as Bills fans think that he hasn't been hitting on the deep ball really at all yet in his career? They say the big arm. We've had discussions about what a big arm means. It doesn't always mean the big pass. But is it as big of a concern as Bills fans feel it is on Twitter that he hasn't been connecting at those at the rate other quarterbacks in the league are? And is it something he can correct, and how easy, what are the things that he's doing that he can work on to correct some of those hits?
Is it a concern? Yes. Is it a major concern? And feel that way. The Bills win a lot of games. Yeah. They, especially since early in the season when Josh has kind of cut down on the turnovers, he's been more efficient. They've really just been we're going to control the ball, play defense, and suffocate you to death kind of team. The deep ball has been lacking, but in my opinion, I think fans are upset because even though they're winning, they should be winning a lot easier, and they really don't like how stressful some of those missed big plays have made their lives, because they should be blowing teams out that they're not blowing out. They should have beat the Patriots. When you look at their rosters and everything like that, there's no reason why they should have gone 0-2 against them this year. There just isn't. And I think fans are frustrated by that because they know what Josh can be if he just had a little bit better ball placement, especially on the deep boundary area. And they want him to get there, because if he does get there, he's not that far off from Pat Mahomes. It's kind of the one thing that's missing, is the ability to go deep and connect on those deep balls at any given play. They want him to be Pat Mahomes, and he's not there yet. And I get it. I understand why they're upset. But I'll say this as a Texans fan, Deshaun's not perfect either. Yeah. I want him to be Pat Mahomes too. I want him to be able to make incredible plays when he's rolling out of the pocket and throwing dimes deep down the field perfectly, but he's not. And I think when Bills fans compare Josh to other young quarterbacks that are MVP caliber quarterbacks, Lamar, Pat, anybody like that, they're just setting themselves up for disappointment. They should, in my opinion, at this point in his career, appreciate what he does well, appreciate that there is clearly an ascension going on. He's not getting worse. He's not Mitch Trubisky. He's not going down. He's going up. And if at the end of next season, at the end of year 3, if the deep ball is still a concern, okay, maybe we can have a discussion later, but he's still a young guy. He's still got a long way to go. And I think we should just appreciate the fact that there has been improvement and just go with that for now. You made the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years. I mean, for the Buffalo freaking Bills to make the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years, despite everything they've had to go through, that's something to be proud of. That's something to build on. I think I would just preach patience for Bills fans. There's a good chance they're going to win a playoff game here. There's a good chance they're going to go to the divisional round and face, I guess it would be KC. And I would honestly think that's a decent matchup for them too. Like there's progress here, and I just get frustrated, just like you guys get frustrated when people expect the world immediately.
Yeah.
Well, it's great. You see that with some of the other quarterbacks, and Mahomes is the one who's ruined it for many people. There was a lot of years where there was a pretty steady progression of what you could expect, and you had the early season success per se of guys like Roethlisberger and Matt Ryan, who were very much game managers early on and then progressed into franchise quarterbacks afterwards. And now that timeline has been so accelerated with some of these other examples that it's really tough to be able to keep perspective. And as we're talking about Josh and his ability to see how he's going to do, I think a big piece of that is what kind of player is coming back with the activation of J.J. Watt and being close to that scenario. I certainly have been curious in the normal timelines of coming back from a torn pec. I know that guys that are, I think J.J. Watt is a phenomenal player, but he's also known to be kind of that stereotypical try-hard kind of guy to push. Same as what we went through with Trent Murphy, who convinced himself that he could do double the work to cut down his rehab in half the time on his ACL and actually made it worse. What are you guys expecting from the return of J.J. Watt? Is this something that is going to be his normal workload, or is it going to be kind of very focused, selective snaps that are the highest leverage scenarios to see what you can get? And do you expect him to make it through the full game?
I think he'll be on a pitch count. Because even though, it was a pec, it wasn't like it was a knee or an ankle where he'll still be gimpy. Like his lower body's fine. His explosiveness theoretically should be fine. Really, the main question is, okay, do we feel good about him being able to stack and shed against the run? Do we feel good about him being able to bull rush with the left arm, or is he really only going to be able to use the right arm, which kind of limits where he can line up, especially for his moveset, because he kind of does that one-arm bull with the inside arm. If he's not able to do that hump move off the right edge, again, that limits where he can line up. If I was going to use JJ, I would primarily use him as probably like an edge rusher against the right tackle position, which I know there's some injury issues going on for Buffalo, so that's probably his best matchup anyway, but also kind of move him around, line him up inside, line him up as ostensibly a Mike linebacker like they used to do with Jadeveon Clowney, use him as a blitzer, get him matched up with, any of the interior three, use him to set up stunts, all that kind of stuff. Don't play him on early downs when he's going to have to really use that pec and stack and shed against the run. Just bring him in on third down, especially third and longs. Use him as a way to kind of shift protections and mold them to whatever you want, and then hit him with the blitz from the other direction. Because they're going to slide to him. They have to. So I would almost use him as like a glorified decoy and just see if that works.
Yeah, I think he is going to be a decoy mostly in this game. That's great. It's an incredible story of him coming back. I really thought he was done for the year when I heard the torn pec thing, just because you hear about the recoveries for those. I agree that his leg should be fine, but there's some concerns there. And if they did bring him out, my thing all week has been just give the ball to Singletary, run directly at him for the first few quarters if they're going to play him in a normal role. So I totally agree with what you're saying there. But that, even if he's not in, you guys can generate some pressures, right? The Texans can generate some pressures. They're not going to be some of the teams maybe that the Bills have faced that brought, like the Ravens. They totally dismantled the Bills offense, and the Patriots have done a good job of getting pressures against Brady. You guys have the personnel to dial up some similar pressures. Obviously, we talked about the concerns of the secondary, though. But how often do you think we're going to see blitzes and extra pressures brought, knowing that Josh Allen has still not figured it out? He really, that's really his big Achilles heel in the passing game, is he just has not figured out the blitz. How often do you think the Texans are going to bring more than normal, or are they going to bring kind of what we've been seeing on tape so far? And how successful do you think they will be against this Bills line, bringing different blitz packages?
My theory is they're going to bring more creepers than anything else. They're going to bring a lot of 4-man pressures, but they're going to bring them from different directions and then drop people out, do a lot of bait and switches where they're going to show something coming off the slot and then drop somebody into, a short underneath lane where Josh might be looking to hit Beasley hot. I think they're going to get creative with their pressure, but I don't necessarily think they're going to blitz a lot. The game plan might look a lot like you would see like an everyday Tennessee Titans game plan, where it's like we're bringing 4 guys, but 3 of them are DBs and we're dropping out all the linebackers and defensive line. Like that's kind of what I want to see, because that I think can maybe get Josh into panic mode a little bit, and you get him moving. And I'm trying to think of the exact game it was, but I remember I saw one team that was bringing the edges constantly inside, and they would loop the linebackers outside because they knew that Josh was going to run as soon as he saw that jersey flash inside, and the linebackers would be sitting there waiting for him, and it was forcing a lot of early throws or just throws off platform. I think if they do that kind of stuff, where again, not blitzing, but you're throwing people at different angles and kind of occupying his eyes. That's really the key here, is occupy his eyes and get him to panic a little bit because he's still not all the way there. That's really the game plan they want. You are not going to line up and play man coverage with this secondary, especially with some of the speed that Buffalo has. You're just not. If you're going to beat them, you have to confuse the quarterback, and that's it. That is the first priority, 100%.
Switching to the other side of the ball, and another player that certainly, maybe not quite to J.J. Watt's talent level, but someone who seems to have is almost as much of an impact on the overall production of his unit is Will Fuller. And that I know coming out of Notre Dame, a lot of people love the deep speed, and we're curious how it's going to translate. And it's been such a nice combination with Deshaun Watson when he's there fresh, and you're able to bump Kenny Stills down to wide receiver 3. Obviously, Nuke Hopkins and Tre White's going to be a all-pro kind of matchup, all day long. But I know Bills fans certainly join me in some apprehension if we see a healthy Will Fuller, going against either a dinged-up Levi Wallace or a Kevin Johnson trying to have his revenge game, being forced into the starting lineup. First, what are your thoughts on what's, I think the latest I saw this afternoon maybe put a little bit of shade on the likelihood of Fuller and making him a game time decision, and maybe less likely than initially thought. What would it be if he is able to play? And then what do you expect Kenny Stills' role to be going against potentially a dinged up second cornerback spot opposite Tre White?
So Fuller, outside of Watson himself, is the biggest X factor in terms of offensive production. People might think it's DeAndre Hopkins, best receiver. See the numbers of the Texans offense really explode when Fuller's in the lineup, because they almost kind of design their passing game around the space that he creates. There's maybe only 5 or 6 guys in the league that have his kind of speed, Tyreek Hill being one of them. And I think if you have a guy who you don't trust pretty much any corner one-on-one to press him when you're playing against single high and not get burned deep. If you have a guy who, if you're playing cover 4, you don't trust any corner in the league to be able to keep up with him on that backside post. That's like their main cover 4 beater that they use. You see it every single week when they get those looks. They're throwing double posts on the backside. If you don't trust your corner to keep up with that speed, it completely changes how you play the Texans offense. Just absolutely completely. Nothing else comes close to it. And so now you're rolling safeties over to his side. You're handling how you pass off zones a little bit differently. Now maybe you're playing more combos, and you're essentially dedicating a man defender to him even in your zone looks, because, again, you just don't trust it. It really opens up everything else for everybody else, including DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins can beat anybody one-on-one, but if you're taking away the bracket from him because you're so scared of Fuller, it almost makes him unguardable because you can't double him anymore. And Stills, while I like him as a number 2, to me, a lot of his big plays come from just kind of like pure chemistry with Watson in terms of being able to identify zones in the middle of a route and settle where he needs to settle. He reads coverages very much like Deshaun does, which is a big aspect of this offense. They run the kind of a similar Earhart-Perkins, like a modified Earhart-Perkins system to like what Dable runs even. And so there's a lot of like reads on the fly, and Stills is very, very good at that. Like that long touchdown against the Patriots, his ability to kind of identify that Deshaun was rolling right in order to come back and kind of go to the left in the pocket, and then he kind of rolled over the top, and it was almost like a quasi scramble drill. Just his mental connection with Deshaun is what makes him such a valuable third receiver, not his speed. And so I think while he's a good wide receiver too, he is not Will Fuller. They don't do the same kind of effect on a defense, and it's not going to open up DeAndre. It's not going to open up the tight ends or the running backs like Fuller does. So if he doesn't play, that is a massive blow to the Texans offense, because now you bracket Hopkins, you leave Stills one-on-one, you take your chances against man because he's better against zone than he is against man. You're not really scared of the tight ends that much because most of their production just comes off RPOs and misdirection, all that kind of stuff. And then what are you left with? You're left with nothing. So that's my biggest concern if he's not on the field, because it makes this Bills defense jobs that much easier. They already know that they can cover everything else.
Yeah, I think it's one of the more interesting matchups to watch is the Bills DBs versus the Texans receivers. It's obviously a strength of both teams, and it has been for a couple of years now. When we look at this matchup, I think Bills fans expect Tre White shadowing DeAndre Hopkins in the traditional sense that you see people playing on Madden or people, Stephon Gilmore in that sense. But the Bills aren't a man-to-man defense very much. They play on zone coverages. Tre can still kind of hang out with Hopkins. How do you think that they're going to do that? Are they going to shadow Hopkins all day with Tre White and let that all-pro matchup go head-to-head all day? Or are they just going to stick to their zone, play their zone, and try to be, like you said, Deshaun, by disguising that and making him think an extra second? How do you think, you talked about the holes that the wide receivers can exploit. How do you see the Bills combating some of the problems that the Texans wide receivers bring?
So it's interesting because Tre can play man. He's a good man corner, but he's so special in zone because of how quick he is to process routes, how quick his feet are. So he can drive, like he can almost like drift back and bait you to go underneath and then drive on it, or he can sit underneath and bait you to go over the top. Like I've seen him bait more quarterbacks into throwing smash against cover 2 than anybody else in the league. Like he's so damn quick, which is valuable when you're playing a lot of zone. So for me, I would stick with that. I play a lot of zone. I think like 70% or something, like 70% of his coverage snaps are in zone this year. And he's phenomenal. Like his numbers are just outrageous in zone. So I would stick with that because, again, really the only guy that I would have, like if you're doing combo coverages, really the only guy that I would have played man-to-man with zone help would have been Fuller. I think DeAndre, you can't shut down DeAndre, but you can at least mitigate him if you're playing a lot of zone, getting eyes on Deshaun, getting into throwing lanes, that kind of stuff. I think if you just line up and play man against Hopkins, he's going to absolutely murder you. But if you play zone and you're using the zones to your advantage to make Deshaun hold the ball until the rush can get there, then you're covering Hopkins by – like as a team, like as an 11-man unit, and not just as a one-on-one situation. Tre White, early in his career, maybe not so much now, you saw him get beat up by big physical receivers a little bit because he's not the biggest guy in the world. So for me, I don't want to expose him to one of the most physical receivers in the league, man-to-man, if that's not his absolute strength,
And I think that you saw, similar scenarios in the last Bills-Texans matchup where, from a box score standpoint, Tre was able to relatively shut down DeAndre, but in a game-winning touchdown need, he was able to go up over top of him and make what was, a phenomenal highlight reel catch. But it showed that kind of situation where, yes, overall on the day, Tre's technique won out and they were able to keep him to whatever it was, 2 catches for 30 yards or whatever it was. But one of them was in the critical moment when they needed a touchdown, and he was able to go up and make it by using his physical gifts to do that. And, I think that's what everybody's looking forward to see on Saturday is 2 of the guys who are the best in the business at their, at their craft being able to go head to head and see how that shakes out. So as we get into the final phase here with you, Brett, we want to put you on the spot and we want to ask for a game prediction. What are you looking to see this weekend? Maybe some thoughts on what would need to happen for either one to pull out the win, and then what do you expect to see and what's your predicted score?
Bills by 4, because I don't expect Fuller to play. Even though the Bills aren't fully healthy themselves, I think Fuller is such an X factor in how Buffalo will defend Houston. I think they are going to stay in mostly zone. And so I think Deshaun's going to get a lot of completions. Again, he's like 70% completion against zone. But at the same time, most of the sacks he's taken on the season are against zone. His touchdown to interception ratio is at 14-5, but he's thrown more picks against zone. And so I think we're going to see a lot of very bend but don't break from Buffalo's defense because Houston won't have their guy on the field that can break a defense, you know? And so I think I would probably put the score somewhere around like maybe like 21-17, somewhere around there feels good. So it'll still hit the under. The 44-point over-under was a little rich for my blood. I don't know why it got that high. I didn't expect that. But I do think the Bills are going to win this game because Houston's offense is so fundamentally changed when they don't have that dynamic number 2 out there. And then Allen, you know, if I was going to do a game plan for them, again, it's I understand they're having a little bit of struggles with the deep ball, but just hammer away at it. Take your shots. Eventually, one of them's going to connect. Eventually, you're going to get that deep. Like a couple weeks ago, you know, Dawson Knox. It's the first one. Just keep hammering away at it. Eventually, they're going to hit that big play. They're going to get in the red zone. They're going to be as super efficient in the red zone like they always are. They're going to get a big play on defense, inevitably, because that's just what they do. Houston's going to go in a hole, and I don't think they're going to be able to claw their way out of. So on paper, yeah, Houston matches up well, but schematically and personnel-wise, I don't really think they do.
I love that we had you on tonight because you're the first person this week. I haven't been able to get a read on this game, and you're the first person this week that I've talked to. I've talked to a ton of people about this game, and you're the first person that has given me some good, convincing reasons that I think the Bills can walk away. Maybe it's just the Bills fan in me of the years of letdown and big moments and it being a young team, but I haven't felt that way all week. So I appreciate your honesty and but just that unbiased insight into what you see from the two teams. I think that it's a great reason to have you on for this show in this week.
I will say this: if Houston wins, the only reason they will win is because Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson. Right. That's about it.
No, and I mean, I think the fun and exciting part of going into this game is that is a very real possibility. That is in the range of outcomes here is a special player can make special plays, you know, and that the same idea as we talked about with DeAndre Hopkins. I think you could see that same scenario again where Tre White could control him for most of the day, but he might be able to make a play when it matters. J.J. Watt might be playing 15 snaps, but what if one of them is a strip sack fumble in a big moment? There are some special players who can step out and make an individual singular play that can be impactful on the day as a whole. And that I do think with the health factored in significantly that the Bills are the better overall team going into the game. But at the high-end elite spots, there are some guys on that Texans squad that I don't know that there's a player that can go man for man with those top 2, 3, 4 guys, and that always has a possibility of shaking out. You add in the factor that it's at home and that the Houstons have that advantage there. I think that it's something that is going to make it a really entertaining game. So I'm looking forward to that. I just shared a video in our Slack channel here, our chat discussion of your latest video on Josh Allen. I shared that on the Twitter machine as well. Give the people any other ideas of things that are coming out here, things to watch out for, and where to find you.
Well, I've already started working on the Titans versus Ravens episode because I fully expect that to happen in the second round.
You're a glorious man.
I just put out that video on the Patriots defense and basically how the league is kind of figured out. It's a rather simplistic scheme, all things considered, and how the people are kind of figuring out that you could just expose their leverages on the back end all day long. And I mean, even the Dolphins were able to do it. And so I kind of expect the Titans to roll in there and take care of business. They have a lot of really favorable personnel matchups on their end. Plus, the last time these two teams played, which they weren't that different than what they are now, other than, you know, Ryan Tannehill being in for Marcus Mariota, they smashed New England 34-10. Like, this is not a good matchup for them at all. So I've already started working on how Derrick Henry matches up against the Ravens defense because I think that's what's going to happen. Whether or not the Bills move on and play the Chiefs, I have no idea. But if they do, I think that would be a hell of an episode going into AFC Championship week, because there's very few things I want to see more than watching Pat Mahomes go against Sean McDermott Stevens.
Yeah, I hate to look forward to things, but that's a matchup that I've always liked over the past couple of years when people talk about KC being, oh, that would be the team you have to beat to really prove it. And I kind of wish that one has been on the schedule because I like that matchup. But I love the things you're saying here. When Bills Mafia listens to this podcast, you might be one of our most highly favored guests ever, especially after saying that the Titans are going to go into New England and win. I think you're getting along just fine here with Bills Mafia, man.
The Patriots are favored by 5 points, so if you want some free money this week, just go bet your house on Tennessee.
I like it. I like where your head's at, and I think it's a beautiful thing. Thank you very much tonight, Brett. Really appreciate it. It's been great talking with you. Looking forward to seeing you down there at the Senior Bowl. Looking forward to getting into that phase of life, but we're going to enjoy these games we have left here. And if nothing else, looking forward to an entertaining game together and something to keep us on the edge of our seat all throughout the game. So thanks, Brett. Guys, check him out on Twitter, Brett Kollmann. Check out the Film Room on the YouTube channel. Looking forward to more great breakdowns, and we will talk to Brett soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks
man.
All right, Aaron. It's time to throw out our predictions here. And I know it was, kind of interesting to be able to talk with Brett and to be able to go through that kind of, discussion. I think he was very fair. I think he was probably more than reasonable in a handful of ways, in that it's something that this is a reasonable matchup. I think if both teams were 100% healthy and we were at Houston, I might feel a little bit different. But I do think that a compromised J.J. Watt matters. I do think the fact that it sounds now like O'Brien was maybe posturing a little bit about Will Fuller, and now it sounds like a long shot, I believe was the term that was used in the report that came out. It does give me some faith that this is possible. This is a team that's played really well on the road. They've been galvanized. They've been able to kind of get themselves into that bunker mentality when they're out there. I think they're going to be able to have that chip on their shoulder to be able to go in here and give their best effort. I do think it's going to take a strong game from Josh Allen. I think he's going to need to be able to show that he's not going to see ghosts. He's not going to be able to see those complicating disguised coverages and blitzes that I think they're going to look to do that Baltimore, showed, and then not to that frequency, but in the critical moments, he's going to need to be able to speak to that. But I feel like there's a shot here.
You know what, Brett talked me into it more than I've been all week. I think there is a way. There's definitely a path to victory. This is a game that kind of reminds me of I hate to say it in this way, but it reminds me of the Dallas game. Big game, all eyes on them. A team that I think I felt that because of the way the national media pushes their narrative that they're maybe better than they are. I think that a lot of people expect because they have been to the playoffs as a team with a superstar quarterback. They have high expectations, even though the regular season hasn't lived up to those. I think all those things kind of put this game on a curve in my mind when I'm thinking about it. And it's hard not to think about this game without the emotion of being a Bills fan, and in those big moments that the Bills always let you down and all those things. So I've had a hard time over the past couple weeks, because I've been thinking about this game now for 2 weeks, had a hard time with finding a way that the Bills win, just because I think of the emotions of being a fan and being let down so many times. So I had a hard time picking this one as a Bills win. I think there's a path to victory, certainly. I think you're dead on with the Bill O'Brien posturing with Fuller. I think he's also posturing with J.J. Watt. I think Brett brought up a great point that even if he is playing, he's going to be super limited. I don't see him being a massive impact on this game. I think that a lot of it's posturing and making Sean McDermott and Brian Daboll spend time this week pushing a game plan just in case he is in there more than they think, or if at all. And so I think there's some opportunities for the Bills, man, but it's just the history of this team. The fan in me, I can't do it. I'm picking the Texans 20-17. Like I said, I think there's a path to victory, man, but I can't sleep at night all week if I put it out publicly that I'm picking the Bills to win a playoff game until I see it.
No, and I think that's obviously almost the exact score that Vegas is picking. I think Vegas technically probably has it, 22-19 or something like that, 23-20, depending on where you're seeing the over-under at. I think that's real close. I do think that's the kind of game we're going to see. I don't see either of these teams blowing the other one out. You see some crazy things in playoff games sometimes when things get out of hand and teams start being overly aggressive to try to get back into it. The score is not indicative of the game itself. So that's always possible. But I do see this game being, Texans 20-17 late into the fourth quarter. And I do think Josh is going to get them. And I do think they're going to be able to come back. I think that John Brown's going to be able to get loose for one. I think that they're going to be able to get behind this dinged up secondary. I think that fourth quarter Josh thing is going to be real. And I think the Bills are going to be able to take a 24-20 victory. And I think that is the ballpark of game we're going to see back and forth. I think we're going to see multiple leads exchanged. I think Deshaun Watson's going to get at least one good play on this defense. They're going to have a couple drives. I don't think they're going to be able to go 70, 80 yards over and over again, but I think they're going to be able to get a couple of things going. And I do think that they're going to be able to get behind this dinged up secondary just enough. I think that the loss of Fuller, and we'll see where that goes, but I do plan for him not to play. And if he does play, to be significantly compromised, that's going to allow them to give just that extra step towards Tre to make sure that DeAndre Hopkins doesn't do anything crazy. They're going to be able to protect. I actually think Kevin Johnson on Kenny Stills is a win for the Bills, if that's where the number 2 matchup is. And really it's going to come down to, can they contain the combo of Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson? I think Carlos Hyde's probably underrated for as nice of a season he's had. The guy has 250 carries for 1,000 yards. It's a better season than most Bills fans probably realize. But I do think they're going to be able to keep that under control, and that I think they're going to be able to pull this out. And I didn't see that. I was very much in line with you. And the more that I keep looking at not the names on the original roster, but the names on this week's depth chart and the players that are available right now, I actually think the Bills are the better team and are going to be able to pull this off.
I see the path that you see. And again, I think my ultimate concern too, outside of all the history of the Bills, is Josh Allen. And I know that in Buffalo, Josh Allen has played big time in spots that matter, right? The fourth quarter comebacks, the wins, things like that. But he hasn't really had a signature win against a big team in a big moment, right? Dallas was a paper tiger, obviously, and that win's kind of got diluted over the last couple of weeks. He doesn't have that career signature win in a big game. He struggled in college in the big games, going up against better competition. He struggled so far in the biggest games, which are the Patriots games. He struggled quite often and hasn't been able to win those games. And it's one of those things that I can't pick it until I see. And that would be a great way, even if, they dropped the next game, that'd be a great way for Josh Allen to really put a cherry on top of his progression this season, is to come away with a signature victory that really puts him in the spotlight on a national level.
No, I think you're spot on. And I mean, obviously from a fan standpoint, that's what I want. I want to see a win and to be able to do that. But I like I said, I think that there's a path there. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to take a big play, and then we'll see how it shakes out.
Well, let's talk about that, because we have some bets, and one of them is centered around Josh Allen, and it's going to take him to have a big day. We talked about it. You went with Josh Allen at 222.5 passing yards. You're taking the over on this, and that's going to push Josh near that 300 mark that he's yet to hit. That could be a big day, and I think you're right that that's what's needed to get a victory in this.
Yeah, and again, it goes into my prediction. I think that the team sees the dinged up secondary. I think that they're not going to lean into. I think it's the 8th ranked defense, DVOA on run defense, and then 26th or something against the pass. I think you have to take advantage of that. I think that it's not going to be the same game plan we've had over the past 4, 5, 6 weeks. I think we're going to see similar to what we saw in that middle stretch of the season, where you saw some of those games where we opened up and maybe 10, 11, 12 of the first 15 plays might be passes, and then we're going to see them really open up to be able to go that route. And that I think this is going to be box score wise is going to look like a big time Josh Allen game, but really it's just going to be leaning into what makes sense from a game plan standpoint.
How many points are we doing this one here for? This could be the last game. So
I will let you choose the points, because I'm the leader at the moment. I think am I up by 8?
I think so. Yeah.
I think I was up 2. I think I was up 2, and then I won all 3 this past week. So,
okay.
In fairness, I will let you call the points, either 4 or 5, whatever you think is appropriate. I'll let you call each of the bets.
Okay. I used to play a lot of poker, and my friends called me All In Quinn. So this is my last chance. This is my last hand. I feel like I'm on. So I'm going to bet big this week. That one, though, I'll do for 4. Okay. We'll do 4 on that one. Let's flip over to another bet here. We had DeAndre Hopkins, the guy we talked quite a bit about here this evening, how the Bills can stop him. His average for the year is 77.5, something like that. Last time he played the Bills, he had under that in yardage, but he did have the big touchdown that you touched on. Still giving him a nice day for a wide receiver. I know Bills fans think Tre White shut him down. I'm not sure that 60 yards on whatever 6 catches is totally being shut down, but he didn't have the monster day that you can expect from a superstar sometimes. I had this at 75.5 receiving yards. I'm taking the under, but I think it's going to be closer than fans think. I think people expect, because Tre White's playing at an all-pro level and they want to justify him being better than Stephon Gilmore. They think that we're going to just shut DeAndre Hopkins down. I'm not sure that's the case this week.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of those cumulative ones. I don't think that it's going to be monster games. I don't think it's something where I don't see in the range of possible outcomes that DeAndre Hopkins puts 140 yards on Tre White. I just don't think that's feasible. But I think that, especially with Will Fuller out, he's going to be the centerpiece of that offense, and that it might be an awful lot of 6 and 8 yard catches with Tre having to make the tackle. DeAndre Hopkins is really good after the catch. So I'm hopeful that it's one where it's a lot of catches and keeping him in front of him. But I do think that he's going to get volume in this game, and that it may not be the traditional shutout kind of game, but it's going to be, can you stop him from making big plays? Can you stop him from catching touchdowns? Can you stop him from, having that big game-breaking play? And I do hope Tre can do that.
I'm going 5 on that one.
Okay, I like it.
5. Go big or home, right?
I like it. Hey, you got to take a swing. Shoot.
Even though all of us Bills fans are losers, I don't care if we end up having to donate this money. And I'm going to retweet. If I donate the money, I'm going to retweet and tag that guy that went after Dell today just to rub it in his face again. Then we went with this one I like a lot, favoring me. And I agree with your point that I think Hyde is better than a lot of maybe Bills fans expect. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about being concerned about him, just being concerned about the passing game. I think that actually their plan of attack on the Bills is going to be in the run. I think that that's probably their best plan of attack, even though their biggest playmakers are in the passing game. Clearly the disadvantage and the teams that have been able to do the most against the Bills defense have done it on the ground. And that is the path to victory against this defense. So I think they're going to try it. But I like this because I think that it is a Bills strength. And I think they're going to try to exploit it as well. Is I had Singletary straight up rushing yards for this game over Hyde. I think it's going to be close, but I think because of the involvement of Duke Johnson in the running game, I think the Bills are going to lean more heavily on Singletary than maybe the Texans will on Hyde in this game.
No, I think that's sound. I was torn on this one. I think that it's going to be close. I agree. I think that you're going to see this could come down to who has a better game out of Frank Gore and Duke Johnson of how this ends up falling. But I thought it was fair to see. And I think that they're both going to get similar amounts of touches, and that this leans into my idea that we're going to be going after their secondary more than trying to run against them. And that hopefully it's something that I'll be excited to lose this bet as Devin Singletary milks the clock in the fourth quarter.
Since we both think it's maybe a little bit close, and these rushing ones are tough. I've lost a lot of bad burns on just getting a couple under rushing yards.
Yeah, literally within like 2 or 3 yards a couple times.
Let's go on a 3-point one on here. Okay. And then I have a couple surprise bets for you that we didn't talk about here pregame. I told you that I had some surprises for you, just stuff I was thinking about while I was doing dishes or whatever I do here before we do this show in my mom's basement. I wanted to see, because I know you think Josh Allen's going to have a big passing game, and I took the under on that. I think he's going to actually, I think a path to victory for Bills is him using his legs more than we've seen this year. It's something that you talked about, wanted to dial back on. I think you go in on it. You tell Josh this week, if lanes are open, you take them. This is the last game of the season. If you don't win this game, put it out there. We don't need to keep you necessarily quote unquote healthy for the season. Play not reckless, play fearless for real, and utilize your legs. It's strength to our team. I have him I don't know if you want to take this, over 39.5 rush yards in this game. He hasn't had big rushing games this year. He hasn't had those 90-yard rush games this year, but I know 40 doesn't sound like a lot, but if you add that with, I think, Singletary being the leading rusher, you could have a couple 100-yard rushing game out of your team in total, and that's why I think one of the paths to victory is.
I think
take that over.
I think that's an outstanding point, and I do think that is the scenario of why you asked him to dial it back quite a bit, and he did. You know, his pace was basically half of what he was the year before. He was on a full game season. He was over 1,000-yard pace. In the late game stretch, those last 6 games he was back, it was like a 1,200-yard season pace. So he dialed that back significantly, and you do that not because it's not a weapon, not because you don't want him to, but because of the long-term health. And that's where that comes into in a game like this. I think that's an outstanding point to be able to do that. I think 39.5 is a fair number. I think that's reasonable. I'll take that. I will say that one shouldn't be a ton of points.
No, these surprise ones I want to do for 1 point. These
okay.
are just
I like that
little
one.
Extras.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a fair number. I think that's right there at a reasonable spot. So I'll take the under on 39.5, and that one would be an exciting one to be wrong on if he breaks one, because that's one of those where he could be like real. Everything could look good, and then he could break that in one run.
Yeah,
if he gets loose on a nasty one.
He can, and I think that's going to be Brett was talking about connecting on those big plays, the big passes. Something's broken on that this year. I'm hoping that it gets worked on in the offseason. I think if the toxic differential is favoring the Bills, it's going to be on one of these jet sweeps to McKenzie or Josh Allen breaking loose on a run and getting a 30-something yard run, and that being kind of the play of the game for this team. The next one I got, you're probably not going to want to take this bet, but it's 4 point. We didn't talk Duke at all this show, and I think that's a disservice to Bills Mafia after all the anger and visceral stuff that we've thrown back and forth for about 2 weeks on Duke Williams, or about a week and a half here on Duke Williams. You will want to take this one, because I took Duke Williams is going to be activated for 1 point. I'm going to take it. I love Duke Williams. I want to put it out there to everybody. I'm taking him to be activated. You all convinced me.
I love it. I am gladly going to take this bet, and I'm going to root to lose. I want to see Duke Williams be active. I do, and I put this out here. I went back and forth with a couple people, and then I had to just stop because it got crazy. I love the Duke Williams story. I'm really excited. I honestly think he deserves to play. I think he's pretty legitimately, you can make a good argument that he's our 3rd best wide receiver. I think the limitations of what he has athletically don't translate to special teams. I think the injuries we saw last week in the secondary with guys like Levi Wallace, Taron Johnson, Saran Neal, all being dinged up at one point in that game, I think they're going to lean towards the extra DB playing, and I think that hurts the chances of a guy like Duke Williams, who probably earned this, activation. So I actually think it's possible he could deserve it and not get it, but I hope to be wrong. I hope that you win this bet, because I think he earned this and deserves it. But I think it's a fair bet, because I think it's just as likely that they lean towards the special teams and the extra DB depth because of the injuries. So I'll take that one, and I'll root to be wrong.
I hope that I just want him to be activated for so many reasons, but the one thing I don't want is during game for him to be activated and people just losing their mind that he gets 4 targets or something. Like, he's not, you know what I mean? He's going to come into this game and they're going to expect the type of game.
The 12 targets he had against the Jets?
Yeah, they're going to expect a number of targets, feed Duke Williams, all that stuff. And then there's just going to be miserable 3 months of arguing about Duke Williams not getting enough touches while he was dying. I'd rather have the argument that they should have activated him, and that would have been the difference, versus him actually being on the field and then not getting enough targets. I don't want to have that conversation for the next 3 months while then everybody tells me how bad they need the number 1 wide receiver. I don't want to do that. So that's the only scenario that I don't want to see if Duke Williams does play, because it'll just be brutal for me for the next few months of having that argument. I got to stop doing it.
No, I like it. And I think that, we both got frustrated in the fact that it almost made us seem like Duke haters, that we were just trying to temper the expectations. And I just had people that it was literally like they were talking about we were choosing not to play Terrell Owens 2.0. Yeah. Like, this guy isn't Des Bryant. It's not some, monster guy that in the 50-50 catch is really a 90-10 ball. He's not that. Like, I do think that he probably deserves to be an NFL wide receiver. I'm rooting for him next year. This has given me some optimism that they can now have an offseason to strategize the lineup that, hey, we need him in there as a third guy. I also think we need that Isaiah McKenzie role of that gadget player who can stretch this field vertically, east to west. And that I like that idea of those two guys being the option of the third and fourth player, or ideally the fourth and fifth player if we acquire an even better wide receiver at the front end that bumps John Brown and Cole Beasley down. But it sucked because it was making us seem like we were hating on him, and we were just saying, hey, he's a nice story, he's good, I'm rooting for him, but he's not some hidden all pro that just hasn't had a chance to explode on the scene. So I love that. I hope he is active, and God forbid that he catches a touchdown or has a big play in this game that my mentions will explode.
Oh yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, there'll be a lot of receipts coming back on people. But I agree with you. It wasn't like those receipts. I'm willing to take those because I think the takes are reasonable. If you come back at me with the receipts of the things I've said about Duke Williams, I'm totally fine with taking that medication Monday. Like you said, I'm totally willing to do that on Monday. Super excited about the game. I do want to see one thing I don't want to see, though, and I hope that this argument ends immediately. I don't think that it's fair that TJ Yeldon has been pulled into this Duke Williams and TJ Yeldon argument. That's not a thing, and I don't want to see that. That's not one that's like fun for me. I like TJ Yeldon. I think that he was a good pickup for this team. I don't think that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott realized. I think they liked Devin Singletary. I don't think they realized what they had on their hands till this summer, way after they had already got TJ Yeldon. And he's forced that hand in keeping TJ Yeldon off the field. And then Perry's good enough on special teams where he just really can't find a spot because Singletary does all the things that he does. I don't think there's no significant to putting Yeldon on the roster. And there's also no significant advantage to not having him remain on the team. And just a non-active role because you lose Singletary, you don't want to go pick up some guy off the street. You want TJ Yeldon. So that's what his role is you lose Singletary or Gore, you have a guy that can play NFL games, but he's not going to be a priority over Frank Gore. He's not going to be a priority over people have said DeMarco or even Sonoris Perry. That's just not going to happen. And that's where I'm at. So don't talk to me about TJ Yeldon ever again.
And I maybe a half notch behind that, but I agree. He's not the answer to any question that matters. I do think he's an NFL caliber running back. 100%. I think he's a nice luxury to have behind Devin Singletary, but you spelled it out perfectly. He is just a poor man's Devin Singletary right now. He's not a great between the tackles runner. He's not a great runner of the ball, period. Yeah. He's above average pass catcher. It's probably fair to say he might be our best pass catching back, but it's just not so much better than Singletary that it makes up for the fact that Singletary is an exponentially better runner than he is, and that when you already have that skill set, it makes more sense to pair that skill set with a Frank Gore. And then Sonoris Perry is not even a running back. He's a running back by name only. He's a special teams player. So, again, if they found a way and they decided that having a passing game back is a better weapon than a fifth safety or a fourth tight end or an extra offensive lineman, okay, I won't be upset if they find a way to get TJ Yeldon on an active game day roster, but he's just not anything that's going to move the needle or change the production of the overall offense. So again, he's a nice luxury. If we lost Devin Singletary, I actually think he'd be a functional player and we'd see a similar, box score to what we saw on last Sunday, where he didn't run the ball well. He had a couple catches. One of them was a really nice screen that he broke for a chunk of yards, and he'd be okay, and the offense would be able to function. But he's not the answer to any question that matters.
No, I do want an answer to a question that matters. Are you going to be back home watching this game? Where are you going to be watching this game? I feel like this is, for me, I would lock my whole family down in the house. There'd be no vacations, no traveling, no nothing. I'd be in the exact spot that I've sat in all season long. How do you keep your little stitious self from being home? Are you going to be home? And if not, how are you dealing with all that anxiety this week?
No, 100% I am going to be home.
Okay.
And it's funny because this exact topic came up last night at dinner with my in-laws, and that my mother-in-law thought we were leaving on Saturday. And when we said Friday, I'm like, no, I said from the moment we got here that we were leaving on Friday. And somebody brought up, oh yeah, because the Bills are playing. I'm like, nope, I said this for 2-3 weeks ago, which I did. I've said this since before we left because I knew that it was very likely that the Bills could be playing Saturday evening of that week. So I tried to play it off as though it wasn't football related. But yeah, there was no possibility that I'm not going to be back there in my man cave, locked by myself, watching this and going through every single same repetitious thing. I'm going to eat the same things. I'm going to drink the same things. I'm going to watch this game by myself. So be home in time
for making your steak on Friday.
Oh, we are going to be having a steak. We are going to be having bourbon. Everything will be in order and ready to go. The steak may be on Saturday, so it may be right there at game time. So we'll have to watch for that. But ideally, it's going to be on Friday.
All right. Well, I'm pulling on you. I'm pulling on everybody to do the things that you've done all season. I know everybody's like me. Everybody says that they're not superstitious. I do the same stuff all season long. I hope everybody is doing that stuff in preparation for this big, fantastic game. And I think my last message really to people is we talk serious and talk about expectations and all that. The Bills, the last time they made it to the playoffs, it was just great to get over that hump. They backed in. I'm not going to say they didn't belong there, but there's an argument for saying that this wasn't a playoff team that when they first broke the drought. This is a playoff team. This is a team that earned it. They earned it weeks ago. Get excited for this game. There has not been these moments where we can get excited and say, you know what, the Bills can go and win a playoff game and move ahead in the playoffs. Get excited for it. Get over the top. Get a little bit cocky about your team. Go out, live it up. Enjoy the hours that the Bills are playing playoff football. We don't know how this game is going to go. Just live it up. Enjoy it. Relax. Be nice to each other on Twitter. Don't get upset if stuff's not going the Bills' way. It's a playoff game. This is what we've wanted for so long. It's a good team that deserves to be in the playoffs. Enjoy it. Win or lose, this team moving forward is in a great position. I can't wait. I can wait. I want this season to continue on, but this offseason, we have a lot of content to talk about. I can't wait to jump into the offensive stuff. Or the offseason. Hope they continue to go on, but be nice to each other during the game. Enjoy it, live it up. I'm so excited to just sit back and watch a playoff football game where all my friends are going to be seeing my team in the playoffs against another good team. I can't wait. I hope they live up to all my internal expectations of this and just enjoy it.
I agree 100%. And I think this is the definition of why it's not same old Bills. This is not some fly-by-night accident. This is not some short-term Band-Aid that turned out better than expected, which is exactly what the 17 team was. That was a short-term Band-Aid that turned out accidentally better than expected. Neither Bean nor McDermott thought there was any possibility that was going to happen, and they simply cashed in on house money, and good for them. And it was a fun run, and I'll never forget that New Year's night watching the Kyle Williams reaction 100 times. And this is different. And this is even early on where they expected it. Everybody always talked, and the way we're set up, you can tell 2020 is the real, swing for the fences season for this team. And going forward, we are positioned with an unbelievably promising trajectory. We are returning 20 of 22 starters. We are returning 25 of our top 30 contributors. We are walking into that with a full draft class plus extra picks in the mid rounds. We are walking into that with $90 million in cap space and no enormous holes that have to be filled. Some good players that we can decide on that, again, Aaron touched on, we'll talk about as we go into. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about a Bills fan, and none of them are any more important than the fact that we're already in the playoffs with a team that plenty of people are going to pick, and that we're going to be in this game and going to have a good game. And I hope that we win. I meant it genuinely. That wasn't fan goggles when I predicted the Bills to win. I think they can win this game, and I think that they're the better team. And that's an unbelievably exciting thing to say with a straight face. That's not being a homer. That's looking at these two teams and a team that has some elite talent that everybody knows in your fantasy drafts and everybody knows from the commercials, and that we're going up against a team with Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt. And I'm picking the Bills to win, and I mean it. And that's an unbelievably reassuring feeling as a Bills fan, that is something that you can do with genuine conviction and be able to watch a game like this and feel good about the direction of the team, the decision makers, the people that we have guiding this team. I can feel genuinely good about it for the first time as an adult. And that is just an awesome, awesome feeling. So, as Aaron said, enjoy that, bathe in it, bask in the light of this kind of day, and just take it all in. Let's hope that Aaron and I are joining you Saturday night around 8:00 to have a giddy post-game victory show. And even if we don't, there's still going to be plenty of good things to talk about. So we're going to be here for you. We're going to continue on content as the offseason goes. Some of you may have seen a post that Eric put out here. We're sending an entire squadron of people down to the Senior Bowl. That's going to be a lot of fun down in Mobile, Alabama. I'm going to be joining for the first time. I've never had a chance to go to this, and excited to be able to check that out. It happened to work out with my work schedule. I'm going to be able to fit that in, and excited to be able to see that. But in the meantime, enjoy this. Follow Aaron as he gets very, very angry with dumb people from Baltimore and other fun things on the Twitter machine.
And PFF.
And PFF, all kinds of people that we're picking fights with. Just wait till the Bills win a playoff game. We're going to be insufferable. Where can the people find you for this fiery content?
Yeah, you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716, and also in the Slack channel, premium Slack channel. If you haven't gotten in on that yet, that's going to be a really fun time here during the game. I can't wait to get in with those guys here, and even into which will be today was technically Buffalo Bills Football Friday because it's usually 2 days before. These Saturday games are throwing me all off, but real Football Friday is going to be crazy being the day before a game. So I can't wait to get in the Slack channel with all those guys. So you can find me there, and again on Twitter at Aaron Quinn 716.
You guys can find me, fighting radio host from Baltimore, at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. It was a fun day today. It's been a weird time over this Christmas and New Year's holiday. I'm looking forward to getting back home and getting back into a more normal run. So looking forward to that. Appreciate your time tonight, Aaron. Appreciate the guys in the chat. You guys were awesome as normal. Come on over, check us out at cover1.net. Give us a rating, give us a review, give us a like wherever you're listening. Tell somebody about it, tell a neighbor, tell a friend. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.